You send the message and then you read it again. Not because you need to, but because your brain won't let it go. You're scanning for the part that might have sounded wrong, the word that could be misread, the tone that didn't land, the way you meant it. And now you're waiting, watching for the reply, checking if they're online, refreshing even though notifications are on. You tell yourself you're just curious, but your chest feels tight and your mind won't move on to anything else until you know they received it the right way. This happens more than you admit. You think the problem is what you said, that maybe you were too much or not enough, too eager or too distant, and if you could just figure out what you did wrong, you could fix it next time. You replay the conversation looking for the mistake. You imagine how they might be interpreting your words right now. You rehearse what you'll say if they respond a certain way. But here's what's actually happening. The conversation ended, but your brain didn't stop. It kept going. It took something that lasted 3 minutes and turned it into a loop that's been running for 3 hours. The issue isn't what you said, it's that your mind is treating a finished interaction like an open threat. You're not overthinking because you said something wrong. You're overthinking because your brain has learned to scan for danger in connection, and it won't stop scanning until it finds proof that everything is okay. Except the proof never feels like enough. They reply, and you feel relief for maybe 10 minutes. Then you're analyzing their tone. They use a period instead of an exclamation mark, and you're back in the loop. They take longer to respond than usual, and your mind builds a story about what that means. You are not imagining this pattern. It's real. But it's not happening because you're broken or too sensitive. It's happening because your nervous system has learned to treat uncertainty in relationships like a problem that needs solving immediately. Somewhere along the way, your brain decided that not knowing where you stand with someone is unsafe. So now it works overtime trying to figure it out. Scanning every detail, replaying every exchange, looking for clues that will finally let you relax. The loop isn't random, it's learned. And the more you replay, the stronger the pattern gets. Notice what happens after you send a message that matters to you. There's a split second where your brain asks, how will they take this? Then your body responds before you even have a thought. A flutter in your stomach, a need to check your phone. A low-level buzz of worry that sits under everything else you try to do. You're not deciding to feel this way, it's automatic. Your nervous system is doing what it thinks is protecting you. It believes that if it monitors the situation closely enough, it can prevent rejection or misunderstanding or distance. So it keeps you in the loop, analyzing and preparing and defending against a threat that hasn't even happened. And here's the part that makes it worse. Every time you reread the message or check for a response or replay what you said, you're teaching your brain that this vigilance is necessary. The relief you feel when you check, even if there's no new information, tells your nervous system that monitoring works, so it monitors harder next time. This is not about the other person, it's about what your brain keeps doing after the interaction ends. You have trained yourself to stay inside conversations long after they're over, not because you want to, but because your nervous system thinks it's keeping you safe. You're not overthinking because you care too much. You're overthinking because your brain has paired connection with threat, and now it can't tell the difference between being close to someone and being in danger. The same pattern shows up everywhere. You have a good conversation and then spend the rest of the night wondering if you talk too much. Someone's energy feels different, and you immediately assume you did something. You don't hear back quickly, and your brain jumps to the worst interpretation. You are living in a loop where your mind is constantly trying to solve for safety in relationships, and the solution always feels just out of reach. This happens because at some point, probably early, your brain learned that connection was unpredictable. Maybe someone's mood shifted without warning. Maybe you were punished for needs you didn't know were wrong. Maybe closeness came with conditions you couldn't see until you'd already broken them. Your nervous system recorded all of it, and now, even in safe situations, it's still running the same program. Still scanning, still preparing, still trying to control what it thinks is coming. You're not broken. You have a detection system that's working exactly as it was trained, it's just working too hard. The mental replays, the message rereading, the tone analyzing, the space between texts where your brain fills in a story, none of this is happening because you said the wrong thing. It's happening because your brain is following a pattern it learned a long time ago. A pattern that says uncertainty means danger and monitoring means safety. And the truth is, you've been running this program so long, you don't even notice it anymore. It just feels like who you are. But it's not who you are, it's what your nervous system learned to do. And what was learned can be unlearned. There's a system behind this. Your brain isn't random, it's following rules. And once you see the rules, you can start to rewrite them. You're lying in bed and the conversation is playing again. Not because you want it to, because your brain won't let it stop. You're rewinding to the moment their tone shifted, the second where something felt off, the pause that lasted too long. You're replaying what you said, how you said it, what you should have said instead, and now you're building a case. They're pulling away, You were too much. You misread the situation and now everything is different. You think the problem is what happened in that conversation. That if you can just figure out where it went wrong, you can fix it or prepare better next time. You're treating this like a puzzle that needs solving. But here's what's actually happening. The conversation ended hours ago, maybe even days ago, but your brain is still in it, still scanning for danger, still trying to predict what comes next. The issue isn't what they said or what you said. The issue is that your nervous system won't close the file. It keeps the interaction open, running simulations, searching for clues, bracing for a threat that might not even exist. You're not overthinking because something went wrong. You're overthinking because your brain has learned to treat uncertainty like a crisis, and now it's doing what it thinks will keep you safe. Monitoring, analyzing, preparing for the worst possible outcome. Except this doesn't feel like safety. It feels like spinning. You think other people don't do this, that they have conversations and then just move on. And maybe some do, but you've been doing this so long it feels like part of who you are, the person who reads too much into things, the person who can't just let it go. But it's not who you are, it's a pattern your brain is running. And it's running because somewhere along the way you learned that missing a signal could cost you, that not being prepared meant getting hurt, that if you monitored closely enough, you could prevent rejection or conflict or loss. So your brain built a system, a loop, and now it runs automatically. Notice what happens right after an interaction that matters to you. There's a moment where your mind asks, did that go okay? And before you can even answer, your body responds. Your chest tightens. Your thoughts start racing. You reach for your phone to reread the messages or check if they've posted anything that might give you a clue about how they're feeling. This isn't a choice, it's automatic. Your nervous system is doing a threat scan and it won't stop until it finds proof that everything is fine. Except proof never feels like enough. They text back and you feel relief for 10 minutes. Then you're analyzing the punctuation. They seem distant and you're building an explanation for why. They're acting normal and you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You are living inside a loop where your brain is constantly checking for danger and connection, and it never finds the all-clear signal it's looking for. This happens in every relationship that matters to you. A friend takes longer to reply, and you assume they're upset. Someone's energy feels different and you replay every recent interaction trying to find what you did. You have a good conversation and then spend the next 2 hours wondering if you talked too much or shared too little or misread the entire thing. You're not imagining this. It's real. But it's not happening because the other person is actually pulling away. It's happening because your brain has paired closeness with unpredictability, and now it treats every interaction like something that needs to be controlled. Somewhere in your past, connection came with conditions you couldn't see. Maybe someone's mood shifted without warning and you got blamed for it. Maybe you were made responsible for feelings that weren't yours to manage. Maybe you learned that people leave without explanation, and the only way to prevent it was to see it coming. Your nervous system recorded all of that. And now even when you're safe, even when the person is consistent, your brain is still running the old program. Still preparing, still scanning, still trying to manage what it thinks is about to go wrong. The mental replays aren't happening because you're anxious by nature. They're happening because your brain learned that rehearsing and monitoring and predicting meant survival. And now it does this automatically, in every relationship, whether the threat is real or not. You've been calling this overthinking, but it's not thinking. It's your nervous system trying to solve for safety in a situation it has labeled as dangerous. And the more you replay, the more you check, the more you try to figure it out, the more you're teaching your brain that this vigilance is necessary. You're reinforcing the loop. Every time you reread the message, you're telling your nervous system that monitoring works. Every time you scan their tone for signs of distance, you're confirming that connection requires constant surveillance. You're not doing this on purpose, but you're doing it, and your brain is learning from it. This is not random. This is not your personality. This is a learned response, a pattern that was built through repetition, and it's still building. Your brain is following a set of rules it created a long time ago, rules that say uncertainty in relationships means danger, and vigilance means protection. But those rules are outdated, and they're keeping you trapped in a cycle where you can't ever fully relax into connection because your nervous system won't let you stop preparing for loss. There's a system behind this. Your brain isn't broken. It's just following instructions it learned when the world felt less safe. And once you see the system, you can start to rewrite it. This pattern is costing you more than you realize, not in dramatic ways, in quiet ones. You're spending hours inside your head replaying interactions that already ended. You're losing sleep running through conversations that might never happen. You're checking your phone compulsively, not because you want to, but because your nervous system won't settle until it knows everything is okay, and it never knows. So you keep checking. You're organizing your life around avoiding the feeling of uncertainty. You don't reach out first because you're afraid of seeming too eager. You hold back in conversations because you're monitoring how much is too much. You second guess what you share, how you share it, whether you should have shared it at all. You're not fully present in your relationships because part of you is always scanning for signs that something is wrong. And this takes energy. Constantly. The mental replays, the tone analysis, the preparation for outcomes that haven't happened. You think you're protecting yourself, but you're actually exhausting yourself. And the cost isn't just internal. It shows up in how you connect. You pull back when you feel uncertain. You create distance to avoid the discomfort of not knowing where. You stand. You test people without meaning to, watching how they respond, collecting evidence for the story your brain is already writing. And sometimes the thing you're afraid of happens not because it was inevitable, but because the pattern pushed it there. Your nervous system isn't doing this to hurt you. It's doing this because at some point it learned that uncertainty in connection meant danger, that not seeing it coming meant getting hurt, that if you monitored closely enough, analyzed carefully enough, prepared thoroughly enough, you could prevent loss. So it built a system, a loop designed to keep you safe, and that system worked. It protected you when you needed protection, but now it's protecting you from things that aren't actually threats. It's treating every interaction like a crisis, every pause like a warning sign, every shift in tone like evidence of rejection. Your brain isn't broken, it's following instructions it learned when the world felt less predictable. When closeness came with conditions, when someone's mood could change without warning and somehow that became your responsibility. Your nervous system recorded all of that as data, and now it's using that data to predict the future. Except the prediction is based on the past, on old experiences, on situations that aren't happening anymore. You're not overthinking because you're anxious by nature. You're overthinking because your brain is trying to solve a problem it thinks still exists. And every time you replay the conversation, every time you check for signs, every time you try to figure out what someone is really thinking, you're confirming to your nervous system that this vigilance is necessary. You're reinforcing the loop. But here's what you need to understand. This is not who you are. This is a pattern your brain learned. And what was learned can be unlearned. You are not someone who overthinks. You are someone whose nervous system is running an outdated protection program. You are not too much or too sensitive or too anything. You have a brain that learned to treat connection as something that requires constant monitoring, and now it does that automatically. There's a difference, a big one, because if this is who you are, you're stuck with it. But if this is a pattern, a learned response, then it's something you can change. Not by forcing yourself to stop, not by trying harder or thinking differently, but by teaching your nervous system new information, by showing it through experience that uncertainty is not the same as danger, that not knowing where you stand does not mean you're about to lose someone. That connection does not require constant surveillance to be safe. This happens slowly, in small moments. The next time your brain starts replaying a conversation, notice it. You don't have to stop it. Just notice that it's happening. Notice the pull to check your phone. Notice the urge to reread the message. Notice the story your brain is building about what someone's tone means. You're not trying to change the pattern yet. You're just becoming aware of it. Because awareness is the first shift. It creates space between the trigger and the response, between the feeling and the action. And in that space, you start to see that the thought is not a fact. The fear is not evidence. The discomfort is not a signal that something is wrong. It's just your nervous system doing what it learned to do. And once you see that, you stop identifying with it. You stop saying I'm anxious. You start saying I'm experiencing anxiety. You stop saying I overthink everything. You start saying my brain is running the loop again. This shift matters because when you stop identifying as the pattern, you stop being controlled by it. You start to see it as something happening, not something you are. And that gives you choice, not to stop the feeling, but to stop acting on it. To let the urge to check your phone come up without checking. To feel the pull to replay the conversation without replaying. To notice the fear without building the story. You're not fighting the pattern, you're just not feeding it. And slowly over time, your brain starts to learn. It learns that not acting on the urge doesn't lead to disaster. That sitting with uncertainty doesn't mean something bad is about to happen. That connection can exist without constant monitoring. The loop doesn't disappear, but it gets quieter, it loses urgency, it stops running your life. And you start to realize that the version of you that replays every conversation, that checks every message, that scans every tone for hidden meaning, that version was never who you were. It was what your nervous system learned to do to keep you safe. And now you're teaching it something different. You're teaching it that safety doesn't require vigilance, that connection doesn't require control, that you can feel uncertain and be okay. This is the work, not fixing yourself, not becoming someone different, just updating the information your brain is working with. One moment at a time, one choice at a time, one loop you notice instead of react to. And that's enough.